Can a protest built on Instagram memes actually force a powerful government to back down? When a string of exam leaks sparked youth protests across India, young people bypassed traditional political parties entirely. In a dispatch from 25 August 2026, The Diplomat captures how a frustrated generation used Instagram and internet culture to rattle an entrenched government and force a minister's resignation. The underlying question goes beyond the immediate political shockwave. It asks whether a digital community built on anger can hold together long enough to force actual structural change, or if the street energy will simply burn out before the real work begins. Written by Satish K. Jha in The Diplomat, narrated for Arva. Youth anger, as reflected in Gen Z protests, has set South Asia ablaze. Beginning in Sri Lanka and spreading to Bangladesh and Nepal, India is the most recent site of political upheaval caused by angry youngsters. Explanations for its causes and implications abound. In India, Gen Z protests erupted after a series of exam paper leaks and the formation of the Cockroach Janta Party in reaction to disparaging remarks made by the Chief Justice of India about unemployed youth, calling them cockroaches. Some see the protests as a natural fallout of neoliberal policies pursued recklessly since the 1990s, which created a chasm between enduring elite privileges and shrinking opportunities for youth amid growing inequality. Others invoke the usual foreign hand trope to support conspiracies to destabilize a strong regime. However, the intensity and spontaneity of the spread, cutting across caste and class lines, despite a narrow agenda of plugging the paper leak and seeking the education minister's resignation, took everyone by surprise. Geographically, it surpassed both the Jayaprakash Narayan-led movement of 1974-75 and the 2012-13 Anna Hazare-led protests, both also launched on anti-corruption planks. Contrary to the Modi government's expectations, the Cockroach Janata Party protest did not stay confined to Jantar Mantar, a designated site for protests in New Delhi that was its epicenter for 50 days. It spread across the country, including the Northeast and Southern states. The government's usual playbook of branding protest voices as anti-national fell flat, and support for the movement swelled. Nearly a month into the protests, after the party's founder, Abhijit Dipke, he launched the party on Instagram, landed in Delhi from Boston and marched to Jantar Mantar, the government was forced into negotiations, resulting in the ouster of Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan. The minister's resignation was the protesters' demand from the beginning, one that they were unwilling to compromise on. The largely peaceful protest carried deep significance for the government and signaled important shifts in India's political future. It exposed the rot in the education system and underlined the fading appeal of Prime Minister Narendra Modi among the youth, once his prime constituent. The recent statement from Mohan Bhagwat, chief of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the mother organization of the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, that the protesters are not anti-national and that protest is part of legitimate democratic processes, is a belated admission that the establishment misread the situation. This came as the Modi government found itself besieged from multiple sides, including a belligerent parliament. The opposition sensed that Modi's most difficult moment in his 12-year-old regime had arrived, his charisma fading, anti-incumbency rising, unemployment, inflation, corruption, and the Ram Temple donation theft controversy in Ayodhya undercutting the government's governance claims. Ironically, Modi's rise to power was facilitated by the Anna Hazare-led anti-corruption movement of 2011-12, midwifed by WhatsApp, Twitter, and Facebook. Now, by a twist of fate, his regime is being undone on the same plank of corruption, this time through Instagram, the lifeline of the youth protest. Every social movement has its own distinctiveness in framing agendas and creating a vocabulary of protest. Scholars like James Scott note that movements operate on two transcripts, public and hidden. The hidden transcript vents anger through coded satire, jokes, and humor against unresponsive regimes, and can be just as potent in undermining authority. The Gen Z protest made this evident, shattering Modi's magic among youth through memes, parody, and mimicry, so effectively that he took to Instagram at midnight in an unsuccessful bid to recover lost ground on social media. The protest's impact continues to reverberate across India, and it is a bit too early to predict its trajectory. Unlike the 1968 French student protests, the Gen Z movement's agenda is not radical. Even its education reform demands are routine and administrative rather than comprehensive. If the movement's implications are radical at all, they are chiefly psychological. The fear instilled by the state's coercive apparatus has been overcome through protesters' valiant acts. Within the broader South Asian context, the Gen Z protests varied in character. In Sri Lanka, the target was the ruling party and its unpopular economic policy, aimed at toppling the government. In Bangladesh, the protests targeted authoritarian rule more than economic policy, ending in the restoration of a mainstream party. Nepal's case differed. Gen Z succeeded in building a genuinely anti-establishment mood, though the subsequent government under Belen Shah has not pursued a radical or anti-neoliberal program, despite neoliberal policy being widely seen as the root cause of unemployment and inequality across these countries. How should India's Gen Z protest be assessed, and what does it mean for the country's future?
India's demographic dividend, with half its population young, could become a liability if unemployment and human resource mismanagement aren't addressed. This advantage is already being squandered, with unemployment soaring. An unmanaged reserve army of unemployed, skilled manpower could become an explosive force. A recent Azim Premji University report found nearly 40% of graduates aged 15 to 25 and 20% of those aged 25 to 29 are unemployed. No political dispensation holds a magic wand for this problem, as shown by the Gen Z protests' eruption even in the state of Jharkhand, an opposition-ruled state. More disruption is likely as AI's true impact begins to show. This is a wake-up call for the ruling party at the center, which bears the lion's share of mismanagement. Such a civilizational challenge at the human-technology interface cannot be addressed through slogans like Viksit Bharat, developed India, or headline management. State freebies and sectarian divides may manufacture an electoral majority, but the lava of unrest will keep simmering. There was a flip side to the movement as well. The fiascos of the Jayaprakash Narayan's movement and Anna Hazare protests linger in public memory. The former wreaked havoc on university campuses without structural change in education. The latter belied hopes for political accountability and probity. People are therefore hedging their bets on the Gen Z movement's outcomes. Still, the Gen Z protest has undeniably reopened democratic spaces that had shrunk over the past decade. Streets have come alive again, a healthy sign for any democracy. Anton Yeager, in Hyperpolitics, Extreme Politicization Without Political Consequences, argues that community formation for collective action is remote in the neoliberal era, yet technology-driven digital community formation enabled collective action during this movement. It also bypassed left-right ideological distinctions and operated largely outside mainstream party frameworks, a pattern that could shape future political action. Whether Gen Z moves beyond social media content creation to effect radical democratic change in this time of hopelessness and despair remains to be seen. Originally published under Creative Commons by 360 Info.